Hello, good evening. My name's Christy Bolingbroke. I'm the Executive Artistic Director for the National Center for Choreography at the University of Akron. And it is my distinct pleasure to return to the Virtual Artist Talk series with GroundWorks to discuss choreography and creativity, a life in motion with tonight's choreographer, Rena Butler. Hey, Rena.
Hi, Christy. So happy to join tonight.
Yes, happy to dance it out through the words. And gonna just remind our friends who are tuning in, if you would like to share any questions, we don't have a formal Q&A period. You are more than welcome to step up, drop those questions in the chat. I will keep close attention looking out for those, as well as the team behind the scenes to make sure that we work them into conversation. But with that said, really excited to talk to you more, Rena, about your work with GroundWorks and kind of leading up to that. Notice I did not embarrassingly read your bio aloud to you because we can jump in sideways and people can find that on the internet. I'm really curious to start. Tell us about your first dance memory.
Oh, wow. I think we didn't have a pool growing up, and I remember being outside. This is the first thing that comes to mind. I had this like teal one piece, like textured, like one piece.
Costumes. I like it.
Like 5 or 6 years old, maybe 4, I don't even know. But dancing in a thunderstorm in puddles, like shimmying my shoulders. I don't know why I always come back to that memory. It might not even be the first one, but this is like an early childhood memory. And I just like remember like a feel good dance in a hula hoop that was just kind of outside in our backyard because we had toys galore. I grew up with an older brother and 2 younger sisters. So there were 4 of us. So we were never bored. But just in this this hula hoop, like dancing while the rain was falling. Yeah.
Oh my gosh, I love that. And even as you were moving, I was like, I still see that flow in your choreography. So
Rena just amazing.
yes, fantastic. And you have acknowledged in some other interviews that your movement's very athletic. Were you an athletic child? Did you do sports and other things in addition to dance? How did this sort of morph into you as today's artist?
Yeah, I played water polo. I was on the swimming and diving team, and it was all co-ed, so it like really felt that aspect of it felt like I had to be tougher. I had to keep up with both genders, no matter what the task was. Played a little bit of basketball, some soccer. My parents, I think they were just determined to keep us busy, so at the end of the night they could put us to sleep without any trouble. Basically, if there's
Tire you out.
oh my God, junior lifeguards. And I think the grit and the athleticism of that, I think, taught me a lot about endurance from a very young age. I remember my summer programming, at least what my mom had designed for me and my siblings. We would wake up at 7 a.m. every morning, Monday through Friday, and train for junior lifeguards. And you were like 9 years old. You would wake up at 7, start driving down to South Shore Beach, like to be there around 8:30. And I was going to say rehearsal, but practice started at 9. It would be running a mile, swimming a mile, and running again purely for warm up. And so I
Wow.
that kind of rigor and that schedule for a 9-year-old alone, I don't know, you just learn, you set it up, and that foundation was set up pretty early on for me. And the companies that I have joined have really put that to practice, put that to work. And I think I just really enjoy the endorphins that come from a good sweat, a good effort. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and down to South Shore Beach, that was in Chicago where you grew up?
Correct. Yeah.
I also just learned that, I didn't think water polo existed out of the West Coast, but I just learned like, all right, water polo in the
Yeah.
Midwest. Yeah.
solo. It's so hard.
So hard. And you've danced for some really big, some of the biggest companies today, like Kyle Abraham's AIM, and also Bill T. Jones, Arnie Zane, David Dorfman. I mean, companies that have done a lot of work to date, continue to be present.
Right.
What do you carry with you now that you are choreographing more? What do you carry with you from those experiences as a dancer that informs your choreographic work?
Ooh, such a beautiful question. I think I know to be true that I just have such curiosities in many different realms of myself, of many different spaces, and I am mostly curious around how I can possibly fit in those spaces.
Tell us more about fit.
Fit, meaning, does my artistry lend itself to be open enough to be able to adapt? I think there's
Mm,
something to working with a single choreographer company like Kyle, like Bill T. Jones, like David Dorfman. But I think a big one, a big struggle for me, I think, which only taught me and educated me in a lot of beautiful ways and opened up my artistry and its vernacular and what my body could do, was Hubbard Street. I think the rep company there was ranging from contemporary ballet to classical modern. I mean, you really had to shape shift in a sense, and using all of the devices and the tools that I had gained prior from Kyle, from David, from Bill. I think it was really a leg up, I think, in joining a rep company because I could
mhm,
use those devices. And those were the things that groomed me to be a mature artist. But stepping into Hubbard Street space, now I'm stretching my body in ways I had never even imagined or ventured to do. And so I think all of that to say those curiosities only bring on more. And the reason why I love to shift companies and spaces and give me company, because that was just the last rep company that I was with. I just stopped dancing for them, what, last Saturday, 2 Saturdays ago? Oh my gosh. Just
Oh, like recently, you know, time to process. Okay.
right, right. It's just really just brought on so many more tools that I'm able to use as a choreographer. I think expanding your consciousness, expanding your physical vocabulary just keeps bringing more fruitful aspects to your own artistry. And the people you meet, the varying communities, I think the varying vernaculars, all of that really just keep, I can't even find another word other than expansion.
Mm,
What I'm attracted to lately is just how to keep grounding myself, how to keep exploring, expanding, connecting to people. And with that as a choreographer, you have so much to pull from. And so
mm.
I'm really grateful to those experiences because of that.
There's something so beautiful that I don't even know we could have predicted just in the first two questions, that you use expansion. It's almost an accumulation.
Right.
That when you talk about the grit and rigor of being an athlete, you know, a junior athlete, and then the curiosity as another tool that you know were able to bring along, and then working with different rep companies. It's really quite lovely the way you describe it, because I think a lot of times what I offer as a 20th century way of working is like, you're going to train and you're going to do this thing, and then you're going to get a job doing just that thing.
Mm.
And I might offer as a 21st century artist that it is that adaptability, right? Not to overstretch yourself, but to say, well, what over there? And how do I do this instead? And
Exactly.
still have that grounded accumulation of experiences that you've described. I have an unfair question then. And this comes from my own observation in the field, that still sometimes one of the scariest invitations you can make to a civilian is, come to my dance show, right? Because they're like, whoa, I like, am I gonna like it? Like maybe they think all dance is ballet, and they're like, well, I don't know. Maybe they think it's all abstract, and or it's gonna have a lot of stillness, and they're also, I don't know if I'll be smart enough to get it. So my question for you is, how would you describe your movement aesthetic, especially with this myriad of experiences? And now that you're coming into your own voice, how would you talk about like your dance style or genre or artistic sort of ethos?
Well, I feel, oh, am I frozen? Oh, no. I see. I think what's interesting with my myriad of experiences, like I've really been fortunate to be able to tour, to travel. And so with those rep companies, with all of the companies, brings a lot of new countries, new sights, new sounds, new smells. And I explore and I sit and observe when I travel,
Mm.
see lots of different people. I meet lots of different people, how I respond, how uncomfortable I am, how much of a home it feels compared to New York. I mean, it shifts in many different modalities, but I think the one thing that I love to tell people who have never seen dance, and I'm always thinking of my mom when I'm making work, because I know she's like, for probably 60 to 70% of the performances that she's seen me in, she's fallen asleep. I'm like, well, why would you come to the show if you knew you were going to fall asleep? And how could you fall asleep with this big music on? She's like, the seats were comfortable and it was dark.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean,
You know?
we've all been there. Yes.
Right, exactly. And I think with that, I'm like, okay, great. So I think what it is, I think sometimes we make work that challenges an audience, but so much so that it's too far of a reach for them to understand, well, why make a dance about this?
Mm.
And my approach really feels, at least my attempts try to be just an extension of the human experience. So you would never see something decorated just because it's beautiful or elegant. I think it has to be functional, number one.
Mm.
I work a lot with momentum. The same way the wind blows a tree and then you see someone's dress fly up this way and someone's papers go. I like to see the continuity of momentum and where it brings us from start to finish.
Mm.
How it can be rearranged as a filler, like Queen. But I really am harping on, whenever I am making work, what is the human experience? Is it reflective of the now? Is it just reflective of this one person? And if it's just about this one thing or one person, how can my mother sitting here, maybe the average Joe or Jill or Jane or Tsitsi over there, can be able to see themselves like it's reflective of someone's experience in the audience? And if I can find one person and open it up to a larger demographic, then I feel accomplished pretty much. I mean, and that is, I think, with that too, I want to have fun in art making as well. It doesn't have to be that serious, but I
Mm.
do love to start there. I like
Mhm.
to, yeah, explore that.
There's something, if I could also offer as an elaboration. You describe it as functional and the human experience. I love this idea of someone else seeing themselves on stage, which might also offer up, sometimes people assume that means a narrative, right? Like they're looking for a character.
Mhm.
But reflecting on my own experience, I was watching a lot of the footage of your work that I could find online. And what I found myself doing was moving with the dancers in having those moments. So when
Yeah.
you talked about the wind blowing, it's like there's something almost innately natural to this like flow that's larger than a human being. But that when people are like, oh, wait, I they we find that
Right.
sort of invitation too that defies words, right?
Exactly.
If you really can find that natural flow. Yeah, I recognize that in myself as you were talking. I was like, oh no, I was with
Yeah.
you for some of, I don't know if you know exactly which piece that you made on Hubbard Street that I watched. That might be the little hidden Easter egg. People can
Yeah.
go find it, see what they can do with around that. Um, if that's the goal, do you have like a formula? Almost sounds too pat, but I'm like a consistent starting place, right? Like some people begin with music. Maybe it's an idea. Maybe it's a personal experience or excavation. I'm wondering, like, day one, where do you begin?
Day one is the scariest day for me in terms of making a new work, especially if I don't know the dancers,
Mm,
especially if I'm not as familiar with the company. And so
mhm,
I love to start with a conversation. I'll have at least 3 or 4 different topics that I have questions about, and I open up the floor. I like to hear dancers use their voices, use themselves, their education, because I think that there's way more to them than just the physicality. And
mhm.
dancers are smart. They're
Yes, they
super
are.
like, how do you practice this mind body connection every day? How do you practice deconstructing what vulnerability looks like and feels like? All of these many different facets of self you put into practice, and you
Mhm,
also practice how to connect that to the space, the music, the people that you're dancing with. So there's a lot of humanity at practice and at play every day. And so to be able to quiet that down, nothing that's going to distract us, I think, physically, and then just really hone in on the conversation and thoughts. And I think to be visible and to be heard at the start of a process matters so much to me, I think, as
mm.
performance artists as well. Um, and then to hear, it's an open floor, so if you aren't comfortable, you don't have to contribute yet, but when you do get comfortable, so I like to see who the quiet ones are, who the bolder ones are. I think the in between. I just like to get a sense of characters from there and really use, of course, with consent, like their personal experiences as fodder for the work, actually, as the thing that helps unearth the concept.
Mm. It's a great opportunity to then weave into. So, how's it going with GroundWorks?
Oh my
You,
God,
I,
I love them. So wonderful.
yay! Yeah, tell us more about that experience.
I mean, so we started with a conversation. I knew that there were just 5 of them. And so I came in with this concept of a wolf in sheep's clothing or a sheep in wolf's clothing. And I believe I had an interview on day 3 where I thought the piece would be more about a sheep in wolf's clothing. But I'm finding the piece is really about, and I was talking to one of the dancers about this today, about a wolf in sheep's clothing and what
Mm,
we do when we have to conform and remain in our confines,
mm,
whether it be cultish, however you want to read the piece of what the ensemble versus the singular voice looks like. And what does it take in order for that person to bust out? And so, out of this, before any of this was investigated, we really sat and we talked about, okay, simple question. Do you identify with a sheep in wolf's clothing or a wolf in sheep's clothing? And so there are a lot of varied answers depending on what this person was going through versus this person. To sit there and listen to the individuality just amongst 5 people, 7. I think David was included in the conversation as well. And David brought incredible insight, knowing his own dancers, having life experience. And I just feel no matter where you're at in life, what phase, what age, I think there's so much to learn just by sitting, listening, observing. And what I tend to get really excited about is, of course, what they're saying, but just the ticks in their eye, maybe if they're tired. I think the little mannerisms or the idiosyncrasies that come from each individual. And okay, cool, I observed that characteristic about them, or the way they like to move their shoulders when they get anxious or excited. I think those ticks like really bring such a richness to the work because it's really the dancer and how um, they're just like super. I think how we can expand upon their human expression. I don't know. I feel like I went a bunch of different places.
Oh no, I got you. I got you. Cause I was thinking as you were, speaking, I was like, gosh, so many people don't understand how much talking happens in a choreographic process. And we
Right.
see it all the time at NCCAkron, and there's an unofficial um, sort of formula that for every minute you see on stage, that's at least 8 hours in the
Oh,
studio.
totally.
Because it's not linear. But so I was trying to imagine, like, some people may be challenged to think, how does all that talking then get into that movement?
Right.
But the way that you beautifully brought us through with noting the idiosyncratic sort of expressions, it reminds me and makes me think of, like, when you are maybe at a fair or walking along a sidewalk that's got artists, along the way, and they do those caricatures.
Oh, I
It's
love.
you, right? But they take some of what is you and make it more heroic in
Right.
scale.
Right.
And so it sounds a little bit like what you're noticing then becomes more heroic in the choreography that you can see from the back of the house, that you can see in a proscenium stage. And I kind of love that idea of your own research as an observer and then translating it into this other scale, if that resonates for you.
Definitely. And I think with GroundWorks in particular, because there's only 5, I think I really lucked out in building the work extremely fast. I really didn't imagine, the first day I'm like, I don't know, like
Yeah.
how
So what's fast for you? Like,
fast for me is building the work in around 3 or 4 days.
wow.
Like or at least having maybe 80 to 90% of the work accomplished by then. And then from there you can just chisel away and get playful and revisit and restructure. But building a template in just a few days for me. And we started off with 5 solos. And then
Mm.
I originally was thinking, oh, we'll transition them in, and we'll transition in and out of them. And then we built upon that and then built upon that. And we had a costume run today and it was phenomenal. We've got 2 more days. And so,
Wow. Well, and you mentioned even like a costume run. So if you're starting at this granular person to person level, at what point do you like to bring in other elements like costuming or music, and how do you ease that into the creative process?
such a good question. I think it's so different for each process. With this process, because I was very sure about the people we were creating with, it's a tribe, it's a community, it's a village. Very sure about what we were doing, I think, in making the work itself, in the conversations we were having, whether it be one on one or as a collective. I think it came pretty quickly. We've got costumes. I don't want to ruin the surprise, but it's think like Adam's family.
All right.
Like, yeah, very tailored.
Also a family, a tribe. Yeah.
But if you think, the piece is called Sheep's Gothic, and thinking
Okay.
where you're extracted from the herd or expelled from the herd, what is that? Does that bring the wolf out of the sheep's clothing?
Mm.
So I think working just with those words, that expression, gave a lot of insight into the possibilities of what a costume could be for the work.
Mm.
And I'm really
Mhm.
excited. They look fantastic, and we had such a solid run today, and I'm really excited about the piece. There's so much play in it. I feel that the dancers enjoy it. It's a challenge for them athletically, and they're crushing it. They're slaying. It looks
Great.
amazing. Yeah.
Can you tell us anything else about the music?
Yes, so the music was composed by my longtime collaborator, Daryl J. Hoffman. He's a Bronx native. We've been working together since my first commission on Hubbard Street in 2018. He's just so cool. I send 3 words to him. I'm like, unicorn, trash cans, purple skies. And he comes back with this like amazing score that could be anywhere from a minute and a half to 5 minutes long. And then we build playlists for certain pieces and we're like, oh, maybe this can go here. and he just keeps churning things out. And so I think I have a few folders in a Dropbox of like maybe a few hundred songs of his that I just like, oh, I want to re-see this one, but this time I'm thinking like an electric guitar that is going through PMS or something. And Daryl is like, okay, all right, cool. It goes to work and sends something that is exactly the texture I was thinking of, the color I was thinking of, the timbre of the music, and he's just really phenomenal. And so he built the score, Sheep's Gothic, finding things that he had sent recently that really give us that dark, almost industrial, abstracted industrial sound.
Wow. Those are some of the coolest friends to have around, right? You either emojis or just words. Unicorn, trash can, yeah, and and they're like, "Oh, that's what you meant."
Yeah, absolutely.
I love to ask artists to kind of reveal some of the illusion as well, because I think for anyone who's had to face the blank page, right? Whether they're writing a book, a song, making up a dance, how do you name something, right? How do you know when it's like the right name?
Oh man, I'm so terrible. I'm so bad with titles. I think I just write them as they come to me. Um, it's so interesting. Like I don't know, it could be from a passage, but then to turn it on it to, I like to find a lot of irony in titling things.
Mm.
Humor in titling things, I think, is fun for me. Just even if the wordplay only satisfies just me, I think like trying to find just a play off words. I think I'd like to think of titles as riddles, I think. And that's what makes it fun. It's that curiosity of, well, how do I turn it on its head, but it's still clear to someone, giving them inferences to look for, context clues into the work. So almost like a riddle roadmap for the audience to be able to say, oh, Sheep's Gothic. What kind of title is that? Okay, sheep. Oh, they're moving in a clump. Okay, herd. Gothic, something dark. Okay, maybe there's something there for me to kind of give me, if they weren't reading the program, but they just glanced at the title,
And because of your, history and roots in Chicago, you are most familiar, certainly, with the Rust Belt and the Midwest. Whereas a lot of times people who, have mostly lived or worked on the coasts are less so. Because of your varied experiences, I'm always fascinated, like what geography has informed differently in making work. How is it different when you're doing a commission for a company based in Philadelphia versus New York versus Chicago or Cleveland?
Oh, that's such a great question, because I get, when I'm asked about commissions by the artistic director, there's always hints towards, well, check out this in our city and see if that inspires you. And I could work in that way, but I tend to pull from literary sources, maybe things that I have read about the city, maybe not. It doesn't necessarily affect me that much, but I think being from Chicago, there's so much in that I am actively trying to distance myself from. I don't necessarily take, and this might be controversial for some, but I don't take pride in my city because I think it's been segregated for years. There's a lot of racial problems with Chicago. I wish it were more liberal. In returning back to Hubbard Street, and living in Chicago, like I going out, going to restaurants, like I could feel still the same stagnant energy towards one group of people to the next. And so I think in my case for wanting to leave, I remember when I was 18, my mom was like, "You're never coming back, are you?" I'm like, "Nope." I want to go see the world. I want to go like immerse myself in diversity, immerse myself in people that have an understanding of what liberal really means. And
Mm.
what a concept. I mean, that's layered as well, but I
Mhm.
just felt, you know, I feel like New York gets me. I love New York because I can be whoever I am and still feel like, again, here's this word, fitting in. Because I feel really weird, really off. I think we all feel that, and I feel accepted in New York. And so I think with New York brings a lot of eclecticism. And when I'm thinking of creating something, I'm always striving to bring in as much diversity as possible, whether that be with the people that I'm working with and their experiences, whether that be sound, whether that be I don't know, devices to play with, like film, passages. How do those things all meet? Like I just premiered a piece about Plato, Plato's allegory of the cave,
Mm.
and thought in thinking of myself as a 9-year-old girl still playing with Barbies, or let's say 5. I don't want to embarrass myself like
In the 5 to 9 range.
exactly. And imagining myself like if I were 30 or I'm 33 now, how would I play with Barbies? And so designing set where you can see through the walls and these live Barbie dolls, understanding what personal space means, understanding how to rebuild. The piece was called Rebuild, Construct, or Rebuild
Mm.
Construct. And yeah, I think the diversity of just imagery of bringing different worlds together to make something cohesive.
Mhm.
And I think that's the catalyst that all comes from, I'm jumbling my words right now, but I think that all comes from wanting just to find a place where it is all possible.
There's something, no shade to Chicago, but I can empathize so much. I grew up in Texas. I
Yeah,
left also at 18 and was like, bye. And went to the West Coast. And uh, there's something that I feel to also kind of underline or footnote that is that it's not an all or nothing. You did go back and work with Hubbard Street.
right.
It's something that you're a different person, the times are changing and shifting. And so if there's anything that also kind of ties to a part of our earlier conversation about a curiosity, is
Right.
that expansion isn't always new, but it's also like, what is that feedback loop to
Yeah.
revisit, to kind
Yeah.
of keep going back to the well and understanding. And
Yeah.
speaking of part of your past, yes, a fellow SUNY Purchase alum,
Ah,
Michaela Colleen Barrett, has chimed in and wanted to wonder if you would elaborate about how you talked in the promo video for Sheep's Gothic about looking for something that's functional and efficient with your dancing choreography. Is this mostly an internal understanding, or have you found any particularly reliable ways to communicate about finding more ease in movement?
I haven't yet. I think that's what I'm still searching for
Mm.
in crafting my choreographic voice. It's a great question. Also, hey, Purchase, yes.
Yes. I don't know if that was secret purchase code that I just passed on, but yes.
I haven't found a way to translate it yet. I think it is an internal investigation for me. What I mean by functional and efficient is, again, something that is expanded from a human emotion, something that could be read clearly. I think trying to get my work to be as legible as possible without being decorative. I
Mm.
find like, well, I remember working with Bill making a phrase, well, why is that arm there? And I was like, well, because I like it. And he was like, get rid of it. Why is this leg here? And I was like, because I couldn't answer him fast enough. Get rid of it. If you don't have purpose behind what you set out to do,
Mm.
I think that everything is valid, but I feel like I'm operating from this place because it's a really deep curiosity that I have in trying to make something clear and to the point that's concise, that's direct, that is edited already so that I don't have to go back and figure out, oh, well, why did I put that there and pull my hair
Mhm.
out? because I can't figure it out. Like with every step, even if it's there, the purpose of it is to help the dancer grow, to help the piece do what it needs to do in terms of the momentum. I am looking for things to clearly outline whatever my statement is and whatever me and my collaborators have talked about. And
Mm.
taking something and re-seeing and re-seeing and re-seeing, like chiseling away at it, I think is also one method. But if I could really try to nip it in the bud right away, I think that's where I'm at right now. I think that's the base.
There's something that talk about like a feedback loop or a cycling. There's the idea of expansion, and then you use the term legibility. I often in working with artists or grant writers for that reason, and I'm like edit, right?
Yeah.
Like if you can say something in 5 words instead of 7, like what gets the distillation of it. Because sometimes we ride out that flow, but really you are trying to choreograph momentum, not to let it take it away into one long run-on sentence.
Absolutely.
So I love this idea of clarity and legibility. Yeah, as maybe we're just naming synonyms for functional and efficient, but
No,
yeah.
I think, and there's also a moment when I was dancing for Hubbard Street, the executive director, Fernando, and his last name is escaping my memory right now, but is the executive director for Malpaso Dance Company in Cuba. And we did a collaboration, I think in 2018 or 2019, and he had taken an interest in my choreography and asked me to send my work in. And I remember we walked to the Met that day, and he was telling me, he's like, yes, I viewed your materials, and with your eclectic past, dancing in this company and that, you are at a feast and you're trying to pile your plate so high, but your stomach is this big. Your plate is this big. So, what are your nutrients that you actually need to sustain the long hours of the dinner party? And I just thought that this was super cool and analogous, I don't even, how do I pronounce that word? Analogy. It was an analogy.
Yes, yes,
Ooh.
this is what happens when we do these later in the day. Okay.
But I really thought it was such a cool metaphor because, wow, you're right. I have so much I want to say. And my early works, you don't even know what's going on. You just are like, yeah, that's fun. And so I think in growing as a choreographer, how do I just put the protein here, the leafy greens there, and maybe the small carbohydrate for it to be a complete meal? It's like fine dining. Like a Michelin star restaurant. Like, what are the things you want to say in your dish? And I love watching a bunch of cooking shows. Padma Lakshmi is like my idol.
Yes, I was gonna say, if we weren't already hungry. But it's interesting to hear you also trace your artistic trajectory and sort of journey along the way, from your earlier works, whether it's doing something with ABT Studio Company and Hubbard, to then I was really thinking it's interesting the way that you phrase this, because I think about the economy of movement that's in your Ballet X works in process virtual commission, right? Like 2 dancers and on film, and like really focused and distilled, the simplicity of that, and in a different medium.
Right.
I am leading this to ask, like, because you are also listed as a choreographer for SF Opera in the coming season.
Yeah. Yes.
Is this a first time opera?
It is. I'm very nervous about it. It is the first time. Yeah, first
Yeah,
time.
can you tell us more about, like, what from your experience and practice with repertory companies rich like Hubbard Street and GroundWorks are you kind of taking into that experience?
I'm stumped.
Well, perhaps another unfair question because you haven't done it yet, but I'm just really curious. That's a different scale. It's another different city. It's a different genre where choreography isn't always the thing, but sometimes is used decoratively in opera. So I was really curious, if this is going to be an opportunity for you to change how you practice, or how you might be wrapping your head around it.
Yeah, and I think so. I'm really excited to shift. I know it will bring a big shift, and I think from this first opera brought on a second one with the lyric opera. So I'm really excited about that as well. And I haven't even done it yet. So I'm like, wow, people are putting their trust in me.
That's amazing. Congratulations.
And working with Matthew Ozawa, he was the one that really sought me out and had been following my work with Hubbard Street and had been following my work since I left to join Gibney and had kept tabs and had reached out. Listen, I think you're going to be great because what your physical vernacular and the way you like to choreograph speaks to me, like how it speaks to me is that I feel like you have so many different reference points and the things that I want to pull into Orfeo and Eurydice, which will be the opera that I'll choreograph for. And if anything, it's made me look back even further, thinking about my music classes at SUNY Purchase, sheet music again, just as like a reminder. So I feel like I'm re-educating and will probably definitely get an education, I think, in building this and working with like exquisite like opera singers and relearning, I think now because I know I can't do my own thing, having to really know the story well, be well read about the scenarios, the different the measures in music, I think the different everything. I think I don't want to misname anything, so I'm very careful.
Yeah.
Into that. I used to be a theater kid growing up actually at Missoula Children's Theater when I was in junior high, and the songs and the monologues and everything like that. So there is some theater training that I do have, staging, how to make things decorative. I think when it isn't my work will actually serve me in this way. I think it can only serve the opera. So my personal aesthetic, I think, will take a back seat. And I'm glad it will, because then I will be able to slip back into that observation mode and go, like, I think I love this. Like, I love to be able to take a back seat to a lot of things. Like, I don't necessarily know exactly what I'm doing, but I do have a lot of trust. I have really strong instincts that I like to follow. And when you have a village around you that supports you, like Matthew, the director, I remember the producer was there. We had a one-day audition. I was on a red eye back and forth from San Fran to do the audition for the union that was out there. The dancers, amazing. And the dancers know my work. It was so lovely to speak with a group of dancers like, no, we follow you. No, we know. And that was super humbling, and I think at the same time really encouraging and supportive. And I feel stepping into this new realm will only be from a place of support and encouragement. And so I'm going to be like Jackson Pollock maybe for the first few days. The first few days are always the scariest. I find my flow really easy, and I think adapting to lots of different spaces has taught me that. And so I'm nervous, but I know I'm going to find it. And I trust. Yeah.
Just in also acknowledging yet more from your past, right? This idea of expansion, but returning to the well and coming back through, and how lucky and fortunate we are here in Northeast Ohio to also get to be a part of your journey, to witness. I'll offer the official opportunity for those following along from home to see the premiere of Sheep's Gothic this summer would be at Cain Park on July 15th and 16th and 17th in Cleveland Heights, Ohio, or at the Heinz Summer Dance Festival in Firestone Park on August 5th and 6th in Akron, Ohio. And you can get more information about these performances at groundworksdance.org. And just so grateful too. Like, thank you for sharing your process with us, for going a little bit down memory lane, as well as highlighting for us where it's a part of what's next. And
Right,
that's been
right.
super cool.
Oh, thank you, Christy. I'm so glad. It's always informative too to do these interviews, to be reflective, and then to be appreciative of all those experiences, because you just forget when you keep
Yeah.
when you're
Doing the
onward.
thing.
Oh my gosh, that did happen, or you prompted so much of that tonight. So I really appreciate you as well. Yeah.
Thank you. All right. We'll choreograph a goodbye wave then. Goodbye. Yeah. Thank you, everyone.